The studio fell silent so suddenly that Ellen's sound engineer thought the equipment had malfunctioned. One moment, Ellen DeGeneres was mid-conversation with her celebrity guest, the audience of 300 people engaged and laughing. The next moment, complete stillness as all eyes turned to a 14-year-old boy in the front row whose hands were moving in graceful, deliberate patterns. It was Thursday afternoon at the Warner Bros. Studios in Burbank. Ellen's Inspiring Stories segment was being taped, the set decorated with motivational quotes and bright, uplifting colors. The energy had been exactly what producers expected: warm, encouraging, filled with the kind of hope that made Ellen's show a beacon of positivity for millions. But sitting in the front row, clutching a worn photograph against his chest, was someone whose presence would transform this ordinary Thursday into something extraordinary. 14-year-old Alex Martinez had traveled from San Antonio with his social worker, Mrs. Rodriguez, carrying a story that would stop Ellen's show and create the most emotional moment in daytime television history. Alex was a slight boy with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of understanding far beyond his 14 years. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt and dark jeans, clothes that had been carefully chosen for this moment. Around his neck hung a small silver pendant, a gift from his mother that he hadn't removed since her funeral 3 weeks ago. What made Alex different from other audience members wasn't immediately obvious to those around him. He communicated primarily through American Sign Language, having learned it as his first language from his deaf mother, Maria. His world had been one of visual communication, facial expressions, and the kind of deep connection that transcends spoken words. The show had progressed normally through its opening segments. Ellen danced through the audience with her characteristic energy, high-fiving excited fans, and sharing moments of connection that felt genuine and warm. She interviewed a celebrity about their new charity work, creating the kind of positive atmosphere that made good television. During the Inspiring Stories segment, Ellen had been highlighting young people who had overcome challenges. She'd spoken with a teenage athlete who'd returned to competition after an injury, a student who'd started a community garden, and was building toward the heartwarming conclusion that always anchored these special episodes. Then Ellen noticed something that made her pause mid-sentence. While other audience members were applauding and cheering, the boy in the front row was communicating through sign language with the woman beside him. His movements were fluid and expressive, his face animated with emotion that needed no translation. "I'm sorry," Ellen said, stopping her conversation with the celebrity guest. "I couldn't help but notice the beautiful sign language conversation happening in our audience." She approached Alex's row with her wireless microphone, her curiosity genuine and respectful. Alex looked up at Ellen with eyes that carried a mixture of hope and profound sadness. Mrs. Rodriguez, his social worker, gently encouraged him with a nod. Alex began to sign, his hands moving with practiced grace as Mrs. Rodriguez translated. "He says his name is Alex, and he's here because his mother used to watch your show every day." Mrs. Rodriguez's voice carried the weight of something deeper. She was deaf, and watching you made her smile during her cancer treatments. The studio audience began to quiet, sensing they were witnessing something beyond typical entertainment. Ellen knelt down to Alex's level, bringing herself into his world with the kind of instinctive compassion that had made her beloved by millions. "Alex," Ellen said gently, making sure he could see her lips clearly, "tell me about your mom." Alex's hands began to move again, his expression shifting between joy and sorrow as he shared his story through sign language. Mrs. Rodriguez continued translating, her own voice becoming thick with emotion. "He says his mother, Maria, was diagnosed with breast cancer when he was 12. She was born deaf, and Alex learned sign language as his first language so they could communicate." The social worker paused, watching Alex's continued signing. During her chemotherapy, when she was too weak to do much else, they would watch your show together every afternoon. Ellen felt something tighten in her chest. She looked at Alex, who was now reaching into his jacket pocket to pull out the photograph he'd been holding. It showed a beautiful woman with Alex's dark eyes, both of them signing "I love you" to the camera. "What is he telling you now?" Ellen asked softly. Alex's signing became more animated, more urgent. Mrs. Rodriguez watched carefully before translating. "He says his mother always told him that love doesn't need words, that you showed her this on your show, how people could connect with their hearts even when they couldn't hear each other speak. The camera operators had instinctively zoomed in, understanding they were capturing something significant. Ellen felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she watched Alex continue to sign. He's saying that in her final days, his mother made him promise something. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was barely above a whisper now. She made him promise that if he ever felt too sad or alone, he would come to you because you understood how to heal hearts without words. That's when Alex signed something that made Mrs. Rodriguez pause, her own eyes filling with tears. "What did he say?" Ellen asked. Though something in Alex's expression had already broken her heart. He said, "Mom taught me that even when we can't hear each other, love is always loud enough." The studio fell completely silent. Ellen felt something profound shift inside her as she looked at this brave young man who had traveled hundreds of miles to honor a promise made to his dying mother. Without hesitation, Ellen began to move her own hands, attempting to sign "I love you" in ASL. Alex's face lit up with surprise and joy. He gently corrected Ellen's hand position, showing her the proper way to form the sign. In that moment, the communication barrier dissolved completely, replaced by something universal and healing. "Alex," Ellen said, making sure he could see her clearly, "would you teach me more? Would you teach all of us?" She gestured to the audience who were watching this exchange with rapt attention. Alex nodded enthusiastically and stood up. Mrs. Rodriguez explained that he wanted to share something his mother had taught him about communication and love. As Alex began to sign, the entire studio watched in fascination. He says that his mother always told him that the most important conversations happen with our hearts, not our voices. Mrs. Rodriguez translated as Alex continued his graceful movements. She said that you, Ellen, showed her this every day, that kindness doesn't need sound to be heard. Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She walked to center stage and addressed her entire audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, Alex is about to teach us something that his mother, Maria, knew all along, that love is a language that everyone can understand." What happened next was unprecedented in daytime television. Alex stepped onto the stage and began teaching Ellen and the entire studio audience basic sign language. He started with simple words: love, thank you, family, hope. His face glowed with purpose as he watched 300 people attempt to mirror his movements. "Alex wants to share his mother's favorite sign," Mrs. Rodriguez translated. Alex formed a complex series of movements with his hands, his expression soft and remembering. He says this sign means forever family. It was what his mother signed to him every night before bed. Ellen attempted the sign, her movements careful and reverent. When she completed it, Alex clapped silently, his hands moving in the air with joy. The audience erupted in applause, but this time it was different. Many were also using the ASL applause Alex had taught them, hands raised and waving in celebration. "Alex," Ellen said, making sure she had his attention, "your mother was right. Love doesn't need words, and you've just proven that to all of us." She reached into her jacket and pulled out her personal business card. Through Mrs. Rodriguez, Ellen made Alex a promise. "This has my direct number. I want you to know that you have a family here. Your mother saw something in this show that connected her to hope, and now you've connected all of us to something beautiful." But Ellen wasn't finished. She walked to her desk and wrote out a check, her hand steady despite the emotion coursing through her. She returned to Alex and knelt down again. "This is for you," she said, handing him a check for $75,000 for college, for whatever you need to build the future your mother dreamed of for you. Alex's eyes widened as he read the amount, and he immediately began signing rapidly. "He says he wants to use this to become a teacher for deaf children," Mrs. Rodriguez translated, her voice filled with pride. "He wants to teach them that they can do anything, just like his mother taught him." The emotion in the studio was palpable. Ellen made another unprecedented decision. "Alex, I want to start something new on this show, a segment where we celebrate different ways of communicating, different ways of connecting. Will you help me create this?" Alex nodded eagerly, then began signing something else. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled through her tears as she translated. "He says he wants to name it Maria's Messages after his mother. He wants it to be a place where people who feel unheard can share their stories." Ellen felt something break open in her chest. This young man, who had lost everything, was thinking about how to help others who felt invisible or unheard. She looked at the audience, at her crew, at the cameras capturing this moment of pure human connection. You know what, Alex? Let's start right now. Ellen turned to address her audience. How many of you have ever felt like you couldn't be heard, like your voice didn't matter? Hands throughout the studio began to rise. Well, Alex just taught us that being heard has nothing to do with sound and everything to do with connection. His mother, Maria, understood this, and now Alex is sharing that gift with all of us. As the episode concluded, something magical happened. The entire studio audience stood and performed the sign for Forever Family that Alex had taught them. The image was breathtaking. 300 people connected through a language that transcended sound, united by the story of a mother's love and a son's courage. The episode aired exactly as it happened, with closed captions and sign language interpretation provided throughout. The response was unlike anything in daytime television history. The show received over 250,000 messages from viewers, many from the deaf and hard of hearing community, sharing their own stories of feeling unseen and unheard. Maria's messages became a monthly segment on Ellen's show, featuring guests who communicated in different ways and shared stories of overcoming communication barriers. Alex became a regular contributor, teaching sign language and sharing his mother's wisdom about love transcending words. The $75,000 Ellen gave Alex was the beginning of a full scholarship program for deaf and hard of hearing students pursuing education careers. The Maria Martinez Foundation, established in his mother's honor, has since provided educational support for over 1,000 students and families. 6 months after his first appearance, Alex returned to Ellen's show with an update that moved everyone to tears. He had started a sign language club at his high school, teaching hearing students to communicate with their deaf and hard of hearing classmates. The club had grown from 5 members to over 100. Alex wants to tell you something, Mrs. Rodriguez translated during his return visit. Alex signed with careful precision, his face serious and heartfelt. He says that his mother visits him in his dreams, and she's proud that her love is now helping other people feel heard. Ellen's response to Alex that day became the motto for the Maria Martinez Foundation. Love is the loudest language of all, and it's one that every heart knows how to speak. Today, Alex is 18 years old and studying to become a teacher for deaf children. He still carries his mother's photograph and wears her silver pendant. The Forever Family sign he taught Ellen's audience has become a symbol used by families around the world to express unbreakable love. Mrs. Rodriguez, who continues to work with Alex as his mentor, often speaks about the ripple effect of that day. Alex showed us that losing your voice doesn't mean losing your power to communicate. Sometimes the most important messages are shared in silence. The photograph Alex brought that day, showing him and his mother signing "I love you," now sits framed in Ellen's office. Next to it is a note in Alex's handwriting. Mom was right. Love doesn't need words to be heard. Ellen keeps a small card on her desk with the ASL sign for hope drawn on it. She learned to sign fluently in the months following Alex's appearance, and she often uses sign language during her show to connect with deaf and hard of hearing audience members. The most beautiful testament to Maria Martinez's legacy comes from Alex himself. In every interview, he ends with the same message, signed and spoken. My mother taught me that love is always loud enough. Now I want to teach the world that everyone deserves to be heard. Because sometimes the most powerful conversations happen in silence. Sometimes the most important words are never spoken aloud. And sometimes a 14-year-old boy who lost his voice to grief can teach an entire world how to listen with their hearts. The silence that began Alex's story wasn't empty. It was full of love, memory, and the kind of connection that transcends any barrier. In a world that often feels too loud and chaotic, Alex and his mother Maria reminded us all that the most important communications happen in the spaces between words, in the gestures of care, and in the universal language of love that everyone can understand. 3 years later, Alex stood before the United Nations General Assembly as the youngest advocate ever invited to speak about disability rights and inclusive communication. His hands moved with the same grace they had shown on Ellen's stage, but now his message reached world leaders who watched in respectful silence as he signed his mother's wisdom to a global audience. As Alex concluded his UN speech with the Forever Family sign, delegates from 19 countries rose to their feet, many attempting the sign themselves with earnest hands. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin not with raised voices, but with raised hands, and sometimes a mother's final gift to her son becomes humanity's gift to itself.